My name is Kelly. This year, I turned 35. On a summer day filled with the sound of cicadas, I was called to the president's office. President, what is it? While fanning herself, seemingly bothered by the heat, my mother, the president, kept her beautiful profile turned towards me and abruptly said, "I've decided to hand over the company to your sister, so you're fired as of today." The sunlight streaming through the window was so bright, I couldn't grasp whether this was reality for a moment. What? I think I let out a foolishly vacant voice. Looking annoyed, my mother glanced at me and said, "Didn't you hear me? You're fired. We don't need you here anymore. Move out by the end of this month." As she spoke, she snapped her fan shut and dropped her gaze back to the documents on her desk as if she had finished her business. Alone in the president's office with the sound of cicadas filling the room, I slowly digested her words. "Are you still here?" "Get back to work," my mother scolded, and I mechanically backed away, said, "If you'll excuse me," closed the door, and stepped out into the hallway. Our company was a small 2-story building with about 10 employees, all involved in demolition work. It was a family-run business. My mother was the president, my aunt and her husband the vice presidents, and my mother's cousin and her spouse the managing directors, with almost all authority being in my mother's hands. After high school, I worked at an accounting firm, but at 25, when told by my mother that we had no accountant, "Are you going to abandon your family in trouble? You'd be the last to suffer," she somewhat forcibly pulled me into the company. Moreover, my assigned tasks were not limited to accounting. My mother dumped everything from clerical work to miscellaneous chores on me. When we were short-handed, I was even sent out on sales calls, essentially making me a jack of all trades within the company. Despite this, I worked hard from morning till night, trying not to burden others, and somehow managed to get through the work over 10 years. Meanwhile, Samantha, who was told she would take over the company, was 3 years younger than me, at 32. She had only been with our company for 2 years. Before joining us, Samantha would often complain and change jobs, saying, "It just doesn't suit me." After turning 30, as employment conditions became stricter, she lamented, "I can't work for such low pay," and spent her days idly at home without even looking for another job. That's when my mother said, "There's a suitable job for you, Samantha." Thus, my mother welcomed Samantha as a managing director to our company. I have been with the company for 10 years, but still remain a regular employee. The difference in treatment between us sisters surprised those around us, but I thought, figures. That's because my mother always favored my sister since we were children. For the beautiful Samantha, she bought everything from clothes to toys, saying, "You're really adorable, Samantha. This outfit suits you perfectly." On the other hand, not being as cute, I was told, "This is enough for you," while receiving hand-me-downs from cousins and neighborhood children. When I was young, I couldn't understand why I was treated this way. All I wanted was to get my mother's attention, so I ignored my immutable appearance and devoted myself to helping out and studying. Yet my mother showed no interest in me, barely glancing at my report card of straight A's before stamping it. If being beautiful is the only way to be loved, I even considered plastic surgery. Seeing my plight, my aunt, during my high school years, told me why my mother ignored me. I had been told that my father had passed away, but in reality he had run off with a woman from the company the year Samantha was born. This woman was older than my mother and not as attractive. Moreover, she had an air about her that resembled me. My aunt said, "Your mother has high pride, so she couldn't forgive that her husband was stolen by a woman who looked worse and was older than her, yet she seemed to smirk, as if saying serves her right." By the way, my aunt is my mother's sister, and she looks similar to me, neither particularly pretty nor ugly. Well, she made me suffer too, but she was capable at work. Mostly it was through her charm, though. After my father left at 32, my mother took over the company from my deceased grandfather and used her beauty to continuously attract clients and boost performance. The increasing number of buildings exceeding their durability also helped push the need for demolition. Thus, even my aunt and her husband, as well as my mother's cousin and her spouse, respected her. However, recently, with the rising costs of industrial waste disposal and transportation, the balance between demolition fees and actual expenses has become untenable, a common issue across the industry, and our company's performance has been declining. Honestly, making the monthly payroll has been a close call. During this time, as Samantha started working at the company, I became anxious about how we would cover her salary. Then, my mother said, "I'll cut your salary to pay for her. Since we're family, it's only natural." When I logically argued, even if you reduce my salary, it won't cover the managing director's pay, she forcefully replied, "It's your job as a veteran to figure it out. Just do it." Tentatively, I murmured, "Shouldn't Samantha start as a regular employee first?" My mother glared at me sharply and snapped, "Who are you speaking to? It's not your place to say." At that time, we lived in the same house, but Samantha didn't contribute a penny, while I paid $1,500 every month. Of course, even after Samantha joined our company, she didn't contribute financially at home. Growing up, I took care of the household chores as my busy mother couldn't, naturally taking on the responsibilities, while Samantha acted as if it was only natural and did nothing. "Sis, isn't dinner ready yet?" When I was working overtime, Samantha would call to hurry me for dinner. "Hey, I'm at work. Can't you just make something yourself?" I replied. "Ah, what should I make?" "The kitchen is your domain, right? I don't want to use it without permission and get scolded." "You got mad last time. Remember, she brought up a long past incident, ultimately not attempting to cook." Samantha generally doesn't clean up or return things to their places. It seems she still holds a grudge from when I pointed this out once before. Or rather, she uses that as a reason to justify her position of doing nothing. Reluctantly, I would return home to cook dinner, only to head back to the office to work overtime afterward. My mother rarely prepared dinner, and on many days, even if there was food ready, she would just eat whatever she wanted instead. Lately, as my mother began taking Samantha out for business more frequently, the need for me to cook dinner decreased, but the costs of these outings continued to trouble us. This year, my mother turned 63, and she started complaining more about various pains in her body and how heavily drinking affected her. It was during such a time that I was called into the president's office and told, "I'm handing the company over to Samantha, so you, the ugly duckling, are fired as of today." Considering my mother's past actions, it made sense that she would hand the presidency over to Samantha. Reflecting on it, Samantha is now 32, the same age my mother was when she first became president. Perhaps my mother thought that Samantha could use her beauty to attract clients just as she had. However, the idea of being fired because of my appearance was something I simply couldn't accept. Even if my salary were transferred to Samantha, I felt there was hardly any real benefit. When I discussed this with my aunt, it seemed the news of Samantha becoming president had already spread among the employees. But the news of my firing was new to her as well. After pondering a bit, my aunt said, "Well, I'm not entirely sure, but it seems Samantha doesn't like it when everyone tells her, 'Don't worry, we'll ask Kelly whenever she says she wants to do something.' Maybe that's related." But that's because people stopped asking Samantha because her work was sloppy, right? Yes, Samantha was incapable of keeping deadlines, often messed up phone calls, and her work was riddled with typos. Despite having work experience, perhaps because of her good looks, men around her had covered for her, leaving her unaware of her lack of skills. My aunt understood this point too. "Well, that's true. But she probably thinks you're in her way," she said, and with a deep sigh added, "Oh dear, I can't believe she's firing you. That would cripple our company," but her nature of not standing up to my mother prevented any protest from her. I felt a sense of disgust at being related by blood to my mother, my sister, and this unreliable aunt. "So both my mother and my sister dislike me," I said in a dejected tone, to which my aunt hesitated before replying, "Well, yes, your mother is harsh, but you might be better off working elsewhere. You're too capable to not start over somewhere else." There was a slight warmth of kinship in her eyes as she advised me to resign. Standing in the company dyed red by the summer twilight, I vaguely watched a mirage in the distance. Maybe it's time to end this, I felt a sense of liberation spreading through my chest. Turning to my aunt, I smiled calmly for the first time since joining the company. Surprised by my smile, my aunt returned it with a sad expression. Then I spent my remaining days busily preparing handover documents and organizing everything for anyone to understand, and before I knew it, the end of the month, my last day, had arrived. When I went to the president's office at the end of the day, the sound of cicadas was no longer audible, and my mother and sister were laughing and chatting joyfully. "That salesman definitely has a thing for you." "You, that bald guy?" Absolutely no way they laughed without noticing my presence until I deliberately coughed. And then Samantha, looking puzzled, asked, "What's up?" "We don't need dinner today." "Today is my last day here. Thank you for everything up to now." "Oh, was that today?" I totally forgot. They burst into laughter again. Realizing I would no longer have to see their faces made me feel refreshed. "I'm also moving out of the house, so please take care," I bowed, and my mother replied with a robotic, "Yes, thank you for your hard work," as I emotionlessly closed the door behind me. From inside, I could hear my sister's voice. "Now we won't have to see that annoying face anymore." "Watch me," I muttered to myself as I left the company I had worked at for many years. A week later, after finishing paperwork at a school, I checked my smartphone and noticed 14 missed calls from my mother in just 2 hours. A bad feeling washed over me, so I put my phone on silent mode and took care of other errands before heading home. The calls from my mother continued to increase, and by the next morning they had totaled 80. The last call came just after 2 a.m. Of course, I had no intention of calling her back. She was now a stranger to me, and I didn't want to hear her voice, fearing it might make me succumb to her demands again. For 35 years, I had been dominated by my mother. To break free from her control, I decided to ignore her calls completely. Although I could have blocked her, I left the calls unchecked as evidence in case she took any obsessive actions. For a while, there were nearly 100 calls a day. At first, checking the missed calls was depressing, but as I got used to it, I began to feel a sense of schadenfreude imagining my mother struggling without me. It was then I truly realized how terribly she had treated me. A year has passed since then. By that time, the calls from my mother had ceased, and I had no idea what was happening with her. Over the past year, I worked various temp jobs while attending a correspondence course for tax accountants, passing the exam successfully. My prior work experience and the diverse tasks I handled at my mother's company had honed my ability to oversee operations, making me valuable in my new position at a major accounting firm. Only now did I start to appreciate the past for having equipped me with these skills. My colleagues at the new workplace were all kind, and we helped each other progress with our work, a stark contrast to the days when everything was dumped on me, and I had to research and work alone until midnight. One day, while visiting a client near my mother's company for work, as I passed by my mother's company, the windows and entrance were noticeably dirty, and the houseplants I had taken care of were completely withered. On the way back, I unexpectedly ran into my mother coming out of the company. Upon spotting me, she exclaimed, "Oh," and approached me. Instinctively fearing I would be scolded, I covered my face with my bag, but she came closer with an unexpectedly affectionate voice. "Oh my, where have you been, Kelly?" I felt a wave of disgust and shrank away. "Do you know how many times I called you? Did you change your smartphone?" It seemed that it never crossed her mind that I was ignoring her calls because I disliked her. After all she had put me through, I was utterly baffled by her way of thinking. Ignoring my stunned expression, she continued, "Oh, but I'm glad I found you. Look at the state of this company. Isn't it terrible? Come back starting tomorrow. I'm not mad." What? Like I said, I've forgiven you for leaving a year ago, so please come back to the company tomorrow. It took me a moment to comprehend what she was saying. In her mind, it must only be the image of a young me running back to her in tears that remained. "Mom, I'm already working at another company, and I'm enjoying it there." As I hesitated to tell her, her expression suddenly turned demonic. "What? Even though our company is in such a mess, who cares about other companies? You belong to me," she yelled in the middle of the street. "Wait a minute. You're the one who fired me, right? What about Samantha? What happened to her?" Snorting, she retorted, "Seriously, I thought Samantha would be more useful, but she messed up by dating 3 clients at the same time. It all fell apart instantly. It would have been fine if she hadn't got caught. Then I put her in the office for a while so she wouldn't be seen, but she can't even clean properly, and she's terrible at accounting. We can't afford to hire someone else, it's really troublesome." After venting her frustrations, she smiled at me and said, "That's why it's your turn, Kelly. Our office has been a mess since you left. You need to take responsibility." Before I resigned, I had created a proper handover manual and explained everything to Samantha. Most likely, Samantha didn't check anything, and my mother probably didn't listen to that part. Even if she did, she either doesn't remember or pretends she didn't hear. After all, there's no responsibility to speak of when she was the one who fired me. Besides, ever since you left, there have been a string of clients who cut off transactions. Don't you find that odd? They said they couldn't trust us anymore because you were gone. That's why I want you back. Having worked there for many years, I was familiar with several of the clients. My mother denigrated my appearance, but there were people who genuinely appreciated my skills. When I resigned, I called to thank the people I owed favors to, and they asked why I was leaving. It was difficult to explain the unreasonable reason for my dismissal, but thinking it was my last chance, I revealed everything. It seems that after hearing why I was fired, these clients decided to stop dealing with my mother's company. Their approach is always the same. They push things through by force, shift the blame onto others, and leave all the cleanup to someone else. This has always been their modus operandi. Biting my lower lip, I thought of the kind faces of my current colleagues, reminding myself that this was the real normal world, and I had been in an abnormal environment. I vowed not to succumb to this pressure anymore. Responsibility or not, it was you, the president, who fired me, Mom. Sensing a change in my tone, my mother briefly looked surprised. And besides, wasn't the reason for my dismissal that I was unattractive? Before I knew it, our argument had drawn a crowd, apparently intrigued by the spectacle. My mother, noticing the stares from those around her, hesitated before saying, "Did I really say that? Could you have misheard me?" "No, I heard you clearly. You said you were handing over the company to my beautiful sister and firing the ugly one. I could not comprehend what you meant. I've worked hard for 10 years, yet you decide to hand over the company to Samantha, who has only been here for 2 years and hardly does her job properly. I question your judgment." As I spoke forcefully, a murmur ran through the crowd. "Really? Is that true? Her own mother said that. Isn't that crazy? Are they really related?" Some even began recording the scene, but I was too filled with anger to care. My mother's face paled under the accusatory glances, and she began to sweat. "Kelly, you've misunderstood. Let's discuss this inside." "Misunderstood? What's misunderstood? If you didn't say it, why not clearly state that right here?" She fell silent, and the people around started whispering, "Ah, she's gone quiet. Then it must be true." I can't believe it, people began whispering in disbelief. Suddenly, something in my mother snapped. "Enough. It's your fault for being ugly and gloomy," she shouted. "Ugly people should just quietly obey the beautiful ones. That's all you're good for." Her harsh words shocked the bystanders, who quickly began filming. "Ugly should obey the beautiful lady appears." That was how the video was captioned, and it quickly spread. This video spread to my mother's business contacts, and soon all the companies halted their dealings with her. It seems that during the year I was gone, there had been illegal dumping and falsification of the books, quite serious offenses. As the video spread, one by one, the clients severed ties. Ultimately, the company went bankrupt, and my mother and Samantha, now without an income, visited my apartment once, but of course I did not open the door. Eventually, they moved into a rundown 45-year-old studio apartment without a bath, living in fear of creditors while working part-time and temporary jobs. Samantha, using her beauty to try and charm male coworkers for an easy time, quickly became disliked by her colleagues and had to change jobs frequently. As for my mother, the video never disappeared from the internet, and she was ostracized by her coworkers, working silently alone. Meanwhile, I found myself a boyfriend at my new job. He's not handsome, but he is sincere and serious, and he likes how dedicated I am to my work. We plan to marry soon. I spend my days feeling genuinely grateful that I've always taken my responsibilities seriously.